Hey guys, welcome back. So we're working on the 67 Chevelle Malibu today, and if you've been following the build, you know that I've replaced just about every piece of sheet metal on this car. It's been a heck of a project, and what I've been doing most recently is a lot of fine-tuning around the panel gaps, or like the door gaps, the fender gaps, hood and the trunk gaps. So had a lot of fabrication work to do to get those panels to fit just the way that I wanted. So if you haven't seen those videos, check them out. So let's talk about how I like to do these repairs. There's really only two ways that I would put a quarter in, and the first way is the lead. That's what I'm going to be doing here with this project. The other way that I would do this seam is I would make basically a patch. I'd make a patch that bridges this gap and stick it in there and weld it solid, and then metal finish it. So that's another way that I would do this repair. Why I pick one over the other, I don't know. I don't know if it just depends on what I'm feeling like, what supplies I have at my disposal. I have the lead and everything that I need for this project. If I didn't, I'd probably go ahead and just bridge this gap with a piece of sheet metal that I would cut and get fit in here just right, and then come in and metal finish it. So let's talk a little bit about Dynaglass or all metal. I've got them actually up here on top of the car just as an example. So I've got the all metal and I've got the Duraglass here. So a lot of guys are using this in this seam, and if that works for you, great. I have not had any luck really using those products, and the biggest reason is telegraphing or mapping. And if you're not familiar with those terms, it basically describes an effect or a phenomenon when you put the Dynaglass or all metal in this seam. It expands and contracts at a different rate than the metal. So when you get this thing painted and buffed out and super shiny, and it sits out in the sun at a cruise or at a car show, you can get down on the edges of these panels, and if you've got a good eye for this, you can actually see where that filler is underneath the paint. And it's just simply, again, what we refer to as mapping or telegraphing. And I see this almost every summer at every car show that I go to. That's my biggest reason for using lead or a patch over here versus putting the Dynaglass in. If you're going to use all metal or Dynaglass, I would just say be sure that you really get it extended out beyond the seam. I see a lot of people doing this on YouTube or in, autobody forums, and they smear it in this valley, and then they come and sand it, and they sand it almost level, and then they come back with their plastic. They come back with like a polyester filler, for example, Rage or Platinum Plus or Z-Grip, whatever it might be. And they come in and do that, and that is definitely going to lead to more of a chance of the filler or the Dynaglass to telegraph. So if you're going to put it in there, definitely extend it beyond. Get it feathered all the way out here, just like you would normal body filler, and then come in and finish your filler work over the top of that with a skim coat. Just be sure not to chop it down and get it sanded down so that when you're done with the sanding and the shaping of your Dynaglass, you can actually see the strip of it. So anyway, that's my thoughts. The other thing is if I have to use some type of filler in this valley, in this seam, let's say I'm not going to use lead, or I'm not going to use the patch. The only thing that I would use in here is VPA, also known as Vette panel adhesive. And I have that here as well. So a lot of guys don't think of using this. It just comes from Evercoat. It's a little bit pricier than the long and strong Duraglass or the all metal, but that's something that I will use in certain situations. Just a few of the things that I've got. I'm gonna have obviously a respirator, dust mask. I'm just gonna use my little benzoyl torch here. I'm just gonna use the Benzomatic rather than get down in the corner and get my acetylene torch out. So I'm just gonna use that. It'll be fine. I just gotta get it heated up. Some metal files. I like to use the metal files here. That'll be kind of the rough end once I get the lead in. The lead itself, you can get it from another number of places. Eastwood has it. Sometimes I'll get it from oh gosh, Rotometals, I think. I can't remember the name, but there's another place that a lot of times I'll get my lead. It's a 70-30 paddle. This is the clean bristle brush, wire brush that I was talking about. The tinning butter right here. I've got the tinning butter that we'll be using here in just a second. And then you can either use a little acid brush to put that tinning butter on, or you can just use like a copper scouring pad on a pair of vice grips, and I like to do that. So, and then the other thing that I've got is just actually this is brand new. I used up all the others that I had, and so this is just basically lard or tallow, and so we'll use that to lubricate the wood paddle when we're ready to start smoothing out and pressing in the lead. I'm getting ready now to go ahead and start the tinning process here on the quarter seam. So one of the most important things is making sure that it is super clean and that you have it down to bare metal. So what I've basically done is I've just gone in with my die grinder, 36 grit, and I've come through and put some scratch in the entire area. The other thing that I typically do is I like to get that weld seam really cleaned up. You know, the factory didn't go that far, and maybe it's overkill, but you know, the factory would have just come in here and spot welded or plug welded, left a little bit of a gap there between the two panels, but they would have just smeared some lead in there. So anyway, you can do it however you want. I like to go ahead and clean it up. I don't like it to be all buggered up. You know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Maybe a waste of my time, but it's easy enough for me to do. So I've got this all cleaned up now. What I will do after I get it sanded and prepped and ready for the tin is I will go ahead and come in here with some acetone or some lacquer thinner, and I will scrub this down real good, wipe it down, make sure that I'm getting it as clean as possible. Then what I'll do, because you're likely going to have a little bit of lint in there depending on the type of towel that you're using, and because of the 36 grit in the metal, is I go ahead with the clean wire brush and I get in there and I wire brush the entire panel while I'm blowing some air on it to get as much of that lint out. And so I'm pretty confident that I've got this panel as clean as it's going to get. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use some tinning butter here that I have. There's a couple of approaches that you can take when you do this. You can go ahead and use something like an acid brush, and you can brush it on, and you can get the tinning butter over the entire surface of the panel and then come in and heat it. I've seen guys do it that way, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What I will oftentimes do is I'll just dip this copper scouring pad on some vice grips. I'll just dip it in the tinning butter, and then I'll just scrub. The other thing that I will do, because you're going to have some flux in there, it's going to get discolored and you'll see some browning, is I'll actually come in with a clean rag that I trust, and I'll come in and wipe it down. I know this doesn't look super clean because I used it on the other side, but I'll find a clean area on the rag, and then I'll come in and I'll actually wipe that tin off of there, any excess off of there as I'm doing this. So the other thing that you want to be sure to do is tin beyond where you think you're going to apply the lead. So you know, you don't want to come in here and have this little small area that you've tinned and then find out that you need to lead a little bit further, because that lead is only going to stick where you tin. And so that's going to be really, really important. So make sure that you tin well beyond where you're going to lead. So in this case, you know, I'm going to probably tin most of this exposed metal. I'll probably come up here and tin almost to the edges of the exposed metal, and then that's going to give me plenty of room to put the lead in the seam here, but also above and below the seam so that I can feather it out. All right, so we're just going to get started here. I've got my tinning butter ready. I'll kind of sit it here where I can dip into it, and then we're just going to start heating. Not really super necessary to get the entire panel heated up. You can work in one area and just work on heating and tinning and heating and tinning, heating and tinning, and just kind of work your way all the way across the panel. What you'll notice is as we start to put this tinning butter on and get it heated up, it will basically kind of go to kind of a yellowish, goldish color. I mean, I shouldn't say gold, it's kind of a yellowish brown color. And then it will, as it gets heated and you scrub it and you're scrubbing it on and you get that binding to the sheet metal, it will kind of turn a silvery chrome color, and then that's when you know that you've got the panel tinned. So we're going to go ahead and do this. I've got a fan running behind me to kind of push the fumes across to the other side of the shop and out the door. Well, I'll probably just work on this a little bit here, and then I'm gonna stop and put my respirator on, and then I'll finish it out. So I just wanted to kind of talk through the process here. Start heating the panel, and then I'll just kind of gradually check it as we're going. I've got a little bit of tinning butter here on my scouring pad. I'm not going to really worry about tinning down in the drip rail channel. I mean, there's going to be some butter that runs down in there, but I'm not going to be too worried about the channel getting tinned. See it? I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it starts to shine up as you're tinning it. I'm gonna keep working it here. See how that just gets real shiny. Just going to tint it beyond where I think I'm going to feather. Down and right here up against this drip rail here, just to make sure we don't have any problems. About got this edge done, and then we'll move on. All right, looking good. Come down here. As you get more heat in that panel, as you move across, it'll seem like it's going a lot better. All right, we're just going to kind of keep moving here, and I'm going to use my rag here in just a second here. All right, I'm going to wipe it now with my rag. Get a little bit of that excess flux off of there. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Wipe it one more time, and then I'm going to stop and put my respirator on, and we'll finish it up. All right, so I won't stop too long here, but I just wanted to show you kind of how that looks after you get that tinning done. So you can see I've got this part of the panel all tinned here now. It's nice and shiny, or kind of a chrome look to it. You can see a little bit of the excess tinning butter that I have here, so I'll remelt that, and I'll just kind of keep working across the panel this direction here. All right, so I've got all the tinning work done here on the quarter panel up in this seam. And I don't know if it's showing up on the camera or not, but you can definitely tell the difference between where the metal is tinned and where you still have just the bare sheet metal. So maybe that's showing up there on the camera. But anyway, I've got all this work tinned. Remember, it's important to tin beyond where you think you're going to put your lead. So that's important. You don't want to get into a situation where you have to lead beyond the tinned area and you have to get in there and heat it up again and re-tin it. It's kind of a pain in the neck, but I mean, a lot of guys have to do that because they don't really plan or think ahead on that. So anyway, all the tinning's done. One of the things that I didn't show that's going to be extremely critical is once you're done with the tin work, you want to get it all cleaned up. Use a sodium bicarbonate or baking soda solution. Baking soda is basic, and so what it will do is it will essentially neutralize any of the residual acid that you have just from the tin butter itself. So yeah, it's just super important. Make sure that you get it wiped down. If you think about it, prepare your baking soda solution ahead of time, and then that way when you're done with the tinning and the metal is still relatively warm, you can go ahead and wipe it down. It'll make things a lot easier. That tinning butter can get, I don't know, a little gummy or sticky. I don't know how I would describe it, but once it gets cooled down, it's a little bit harder to get cleaned off of there. If you forget or you don't do it right away, something that will certainly help is just get the hottest water that you can, make that sodium baking soda solution, and then you can wipe it down relatively easy that way as well. So once you've wiped it down, I change out my water, is what I typically do, and then I just flush it and wash it down real good with just clean water, and then I blow it dry, wipe it dry, whatever works best. And then again, I'm back to using my wire brush, a brand new clean wire brush, and my air blower, just kind of blowing any lint that might stick to it or get caught in it. It won't be as bad this time around because the tinning butter, the tin itself, it has a tendency to kind of fill some of the scratch. So it won't be near as bad as it was when, as it was when I did the 36 grit and wiped it down. So anyway, it is ready to go. So we're gonna get ready to put some lead in it now. And I'm just gonna come in and heat the panel, kind of get the panel nice and heated up. It won't need to get as hot as I did for the tinning. And we're just gonna start stacking that lead in there. And what I'll do is I'll kind of focus on just filling the valley or the seam here. Just really focus on that. I'll put a little extra in there, then I'll come in and basically smush it down. I don't even know if smush is a word, but I'll get it smushed down in there, make sure I get rid of any air pockets, get it packed in there real good, and then I'll start feathering it out. And then it just gets a little tricky, sometimes with the heat, especially since I'm going to be using some bigger sticks than I did for the other side. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story behind that real quick, maybe just kind of a pro tip. So each quarter seam for me takes anywhere from 2 to 2.5 pounds of lead. I had some 1/4 pound sticks that I used on the other side. They were from Eastwood. I needed about 10 of them. I needed to get some more lead for this side. And when I went back to Eastwood and looked to get more lead from them, 10 sticks, 1/4 pound each, so 2.5 pounds of lead was going to cost me $80 plus shipping. So I decided I was just going to go back to Rotometals. That's who I get most of my lead supplies from. And they had 1 pound sticks. So 1 pound sticks here for about $13, $12 or $13 a piece. So all in, I've got 3 pounds of lead. And all in, shipped to my door, it was $50. So yeah, I was not gonna pay Eastwood $80 plus shipping when I could just get this stuff from Rotometals and save, probably 35, 40 bucks. So Eastwood, you need to come down on some of them prices, man. But anyway, just real quick, I don't know if I've talked about it. I mean, this is just regular old body solder lead. It's 30% tin and 70% lead, so it's a 30-70 blend. So that's what I'm going to use. They can be a little trickier because they're so big. I actually like them better for auto body stuff like this, but they can be a little bit trickier because the smaller sticks, the ones I had from Eastwood are about half you know, a fourth of this size, and they're easy to get melted and get dabbed in here. So I'll just get in here and make sure I watch my heat and get those things all dabbed in. So anyway, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get ready here. Oh, I forgot. I mean, I'll talk about it maybe here in just a second, but I'm gonna use just my paddle. Once I get that lead all built up into that seam, I'll use my paddle here. I'll melt some tallow, dip it in. You could use lard if you wanted. I use tallow just because that's what I'm used to using. I'll dip it in there, get a little bit of lubricant on there, wipe it off a little bit on a lint-free cloth. I just use an old pair of jeans. You could use anything that's kind of lint-free, to be honest. We just want to get a little bit of a film on there as a lubricant, and then we'll come in and we'll start smashing that in here, and then we'll start feathering it out up and down. So anyway, I'm gonna get all set up here, and when we come back, we'll be putting some lead in this seam. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start putting in some lead here. I'm gonna get the panel heated up here with my torch, heat the stick of lead as well. And just as I'm moving along, I'm just gonna get in here and twist and get it put into place. I've got a couple of little pieces from the Eastwood that I'll go ahead and use. This is how tiny their lead sticks are, and they work fine. Pretty easy to heat up and get put in there, but I'm gonna use these bigger sticks that I have now for this side. So anyway, we're just gonna kind of start in one section, work our way across in terms of getting the lead put in. I'll probably start more towards the bottom to kind of build a little bit of a dam, and then kind of work my way up. And as I get a section done, I'll come in and start paddling, and then we'll eventually just work all the way across the panel here. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Kind of get my stick heated up. Just kind of twist it off there like that. Makes it pretty easy. If you think you feel like you're getting a little bit too warm, you can just kind of keep moving. Sometimes you can kind of heat the panel and heat the stick separately. Keep coming back. It'll look a little ugly at first. Not a big deal. We'll come in and paddle it, get it all cleaned up real nice. I will say that these bigger sticks from Rotometal are a lot easier in terms of putting in the material faster than using the little sticks from Eastwood, but they are just a little trickier to get melted in there is all. Because you got to put a little bit more heat in the lead stick itself. Kind of twist it. You notice that lead's sticking now. It's sticking anywhere I have that tinning work done. And just kind of heat this up and put a little in there. Like I said, we're going to get in there with the paddle. We're going to smush it down. I'm just going to gradually, getting pretty close. I think I'm going to start paddling here in just a second. Maybe a little bit more here. And we'll be able to work that across as we're paddling. We'll be able to work that across the panel too. Like I said, the bigger sticks are just a little trickier to work with than the smaller ones, but all right, we're going to go ahead and start paddling that a little bit. I'm going to heat my tallow up. I'm going to heat the tallow up and dip my paddle in it. So I'm going to turn around here and just heat the tallow and then get that going. I've just got a real fine skim coat of lubricant on here, and now we're going to start paddling. What we want to do is just make sure we get in there and start pushing that down real well, get rid of any air pockets. We'll just kind of keep checking it here. I've got it on there pretty good, so we'll just kind of keep checking it until it gets soft enough to paddle in there. I'm just gonna smash it down in, and then we're gonna basically ice a cake with it. You can see how I just get in there and keep putting some heat on it. Get it smoothed out here. Try to feather it out past the seam. Go ahead and start smashing this in real good. I'll come back and make another pass over it. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting that lead nice and soft down underneath into that seam too. Kind of keep working here. And then I'll start feathering. We're going to come in and file a lot of this back off of it, so it doesn't have to be super pretty, but what I typically do down below here is I feather from the bottom up, try to get it up in there, just kind of manage all of it at once here. Home stretch. Kind of keep packing it in, and then we'll start smoothing it out, getting it feathered. Like I said, it doesn't have to look pretty. The one thing that you don't want to worry about is if you're high. If you're high, you're good. You're going to end up filing it out anyway. If you're low, we'll come back in. You know, if I'm low, I'm going to come back in and add a little bit more lead. Now I'm a little bit low down in this area, so I'm going to try to bring it down a little bit. The other thing that I want to try to do is keep it out of the drip rail if I can. I've already done the other side, so I know that it's typically just a little bit low down in these areas, and I'm just going to try to get it feathered down in that section just to save myself a little bit of time filing. All right, looking pretty good. I think I'm a little low right in here, so I'm gonna take a stick and put a little bit more in there, but I feel like I'm just a little bit low right here. It could just be that I'm high around it, but I'll go ahead and put some more lead in that section there. Okay, so I've got all the lead in place here, and I'm getting ready to file it. I'm just going to use a metal file. I'm just going to use 8 teeth per inch is what I like to use. I seem to take the lead off pretty quickly. And then I've got an older school file here as well. I actually like to come in and finish up with this one. I think it gives just a little bit smoother cut for some reason. And so I'll come in and finish up with that. But I'm just going to come in and metal file it. I'll go ahead and put my dust mask on, although the metal shavings are going to be pretty heavy. I'm not too worried about it. I've got the fan blowing behind me to kind of keep any dust away from me. But I will go ahead and throw on my dust mask slash respirator, and we'll go ahead and get this filed. It's really just straight line filing. You know, it's straight line. It's not like if you're doing body work and you can get up on here and really get a lot of different angles. I mean, you're really going straight line the whole way and changing direction. It gets a little bit more complicated when you get down in this area, just because you've got the drip rail. You don't have much, you know, obviously you can't change directions. I've been filing on this lead here for about 20-25 minutes or so, and I'm starting to see a couple of areas that look like they're going to be a little bit low. Now if I get in there and finish filing, I've got quite a bit of material still built up here that I'll need to get feathered and transitioned, but I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit more lead in kind of this area, and then I've got a spot here, and then I've got a little spot here. I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit more on, but what I don't want to do is get into a situation where I'm trying to feather and take so much material out that I actually start cutting through into some of the tinned metal underneath the lead. Because once you start scratching that tin off with your file, you can't come back and let it unless you tin it again. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more lead in a couple of spots now that I can kind of see how things are shaping up here. Okay, wow, that is quite the workout doing all that filing work. So I've been filing on this for just about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. I had to add a little bit of lead in a couple of spots. So yeah, maybe an hour and 45 minutes of filing on this, but it is quite the workout. And I think I've got it where I want it now. So all I'm gonna do at this point is I'm gonna come in with some 80 grit sandpaper on a block. I'm gonna do it by hand. And the reason for that is I don't want to use any power or air tools, because I don't want to start creating a bunch of dust and getting it in the air any more than I need to. So just want to make sure that you know, I do it by hand. I'm gonna block it just like I normally would when I'm doing filler work. And then I'll wear a respirator or a dust mask. So that's probably the most important thing for me is I do it by hand. I make sure that I'm not generating any dust and getting it into the air, and go from there. So a couple of things though. One thing is that, you know, I hear a lot of people talk about the lead not being compatible with modern day primers and paints, and you know, maybe that's true for certain products, but I've always used epoxy over the top of lead, followed by urethane primer, and then base coat, clear coat. Never had any issues, ever. No issues at all. So I suspect that some of the concern or some of the talk around incompatibility has to actually do more with the prep than it does with the actual primers and top coats that are being used. So something, you know, everybody's using aluminum oxide to do their filler work and their primer work. I've got a cabinet full of aluminum oxide sandpaper. But with that being said, I don't use aluminum oxide on lead. The aluminum oxide grits can get embedded into the lead because the lead is soft. And if you don't get those little granules out of there, you do run the risk of having some reactions down the road. That the paint can sometimes look granular down the road. You can start to see a little bit of paint failure, and I've talked to a number of old timers that really suspect that it's related to the aluminum oxide sandpaper. So what I typically use is a ceramic based sandpaper. So I've just got some of this. I think 3M makes it. This came from Westlake Hardware. So you can see here that is just a ceramic sandpaper, 80 grit. You can also use a carbide based of sandpaper. So that's what I would recommend, is avoid aluminum oxide when you're sanding your lead and really gravitate towards something like a ceramic based or a carbide based. I'm just about ready to wrap up everything here on the lead seam on the 67 Chevelle. Really happy with the way everything turned out. Both sides look great. But one thing that I didn't want to forget to say, and that is that there's two important steps now that I have all of this lead work sanded and I've got it all feathered. I'm happy with it. It's ready to have some epoxy put on it, and then we'll put a skim coat of plastic in there just to finish everything out. But really two things that are really important. If you remember, right after I got done doing all of the tinning work, prior to putting any lead in, I washed everything down real well with a sodium bicarbonate solution. I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna wipe it all down again just to make sure that there are no issues. Just one more chance to neutralize any of that acid. I mean, I've done so much sanding and filing on this that I doubt that there's going to be a problem, but I'm going to come in there and I'm going to wipe everything down again, just in case. So I'm just going to get everything neutralized and wiped down. The other thing, before I actually even do that, the other thing that I highly recommend you do, especially if you've sanded this, is take a wire brush to it. Get your wire brush and get on it and just scrub it real good. And what that will potentially do is it will dislodge any little granulars, any grit from your sandpaper. Now, I'm not using aluminum oxide, so I'm not worried about any type of chemical reactions, but it's still just a good little step to get in there and wire brush it, and hopefully, again, it's easy enough to do, just like it's easy enough to wipe it down with sodium bicarb. I call it sodium bicarb, but baking soda solution. So what I'm going to have to do is, there's a body line here in the roof skin. This body line comes down, and there's also a body line here in the quarter. As you start to get up to where the seam is, where they are welded and leaded now, there is no body line. So what I'm going to do is come in here with some filler, probably some VPA, again, Vette panel adhesive, and I'm just going to build that up and kind of make this faux body line here and just get that. As I was mentioning on the other side, we've got these body lines. Got the body line here that then continues down here, and then in between this no man's land, there really, there isn't a body line because of all the work that has to be done there where the two panels meet. So I've already stacked some filler up in here, and I'm just going to get in there and just be real patient, and I'm going to start to build that body line up and get it as close as possible